Okay, hi friends, and we're continuing. Just hope my voice holds out here. Letters on Occult Meditation, Program 44, and we're looking at color and sound, and especially color as produced by sound. So here on page 208, in studying this question of color and sound in meditation, how best shall we divide our vast subject? Okay. Let us consider it under the following heads: enumeration of the colors and certain comments thereon, colors and the law of correspondences. We will always have frequencies and notes and perhaps certain symbols which connect with the colors, the effects of colors on the bodies of the pupil, just as we saw the effects of mantric forms on the bodies and on the entire personality, on groups and on group work, and on the environment, the application of color in meditation, for healing in meditation, in constructive work, just as the solar logos used the 7 rays of light, the 7 colors, to construct his solar system, and the future use of color. So here are the 5 that we will be looking at. Enumeration of colors, comments, law of correspondences and colors, the effects of colors on the bodies of the pupil, and on groups and on group work, and on the environment, and the application of color in meditation, for healing in meditation and in constructive work, and the future use of color. Under these 5 heads, we should be able to sum up all that has to be said at present. Of course, there's so much more to be said. Perhaps little that I may say will be fundamentally new, for I give not aught which may not be found in that foundation book of HPB's. What, the Secret Doctrine? But there's also kind of a third esoteric volume of the Secret Doctrine in its dual publication, 2 books. The one he usually uses is 3 books of the Secret Doctrine. But in a newer presentation and in aggregation of material under one head may come enlightenment and a further wise adjustment of knowledge. We will take up these 5 divisions later. Tonight I will add only a few further points to those already given. So everything that needs to be said at this time will be summed up under the headings that we have here, these 5. Okay. He's very cautious as to what he gives. That foundation book, well, I do remember reading in this sort of addendum to the Secret Doctrine, addendum to the 2-volume set, quite a bit about color anyway. Colors as manifested on the physical plane show at their crudest and harshest. If you look at the fourth formula, you will find a color display regarding it. Of course, that's fitting because the number 4 is so associated with color. But we will find harsh and clashing colors, and we will also find a representation of more subtle hues, which have to be noted and appreciated. So colors on the physical plane at their harshest and crudest, which of course is to be expected. Even the most exquisite of shades, as seen by the physical eye, is harsh, hard and harsh compared to those on the emotional plane. And as the finer matter of the other planes is contacted, the beauty, the softness, the exquisite quality of the different hues grows with each transition. So this is something that we will one day have to witness in the manner that he describes it. When the ultimate and synthetic color is reached, the beauty transcends all conception, and probably this is the synthetic indigo ray, the color thereof, or the registration of this ray in its color aspect. Colors such as colors such as we have now to do with in evolution are the colors of light. Okay. Certain colors which are leftovers of a previous solar system have been seized upon as modes of expression by that mysterious something which we call cosmic evil. In our ignorance, so we call it. I think you'll talk about loathsome purple and lurid green and colors such as brown. Let's see what he says here. I put it in green because it's the previous solar system. These are involutionary colors and are made and are media for the force of the Dark Brotherhood, which seeks to imprison the human consciousness, to hold it down and make it subject the involutionary arc. Now, humanity at the moment is on the evolutionary arc, but is carrying with it certain aspects of its equipment which still have involutionary tendencies. We're told that the Dark Brotherhood is, by and large, the prisoner of a great material deva, the most material, probably, of all devas, and it seeks to capture the volatile essence of every being and to imprison it within this material density, which is unprincipled and therefore not part of the development of the present solar system. Okay, with them, the aspirant to the path of light has naught to do. They are such hues as brown, okay, and gray. The loathsome purple, it must be maybe a specific one, and the lurid greens, more than one, that are contacted in the dark places of the earth, on the emotional plane, I would say, especially on subplanes 7 and 6, you know, the astral hells, and on the lower level of the mental plane. They are negations. Okay, and brown, gray, well, it's, let me, is there any brown here that I can use? Well, not exactly, but okay, we can, it's pretty close. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Brown, and with gray, we probably find something. 1, 2, 3. Loathsome purple, well, we're not going to find any loathsome purple here. And lurid greens. The word lurid, does it mean there is a deep attraction to matter, perhaps, and the determination to remain within that realm, or if venturing higher, to control from that higher point of view those realms, the very material realms, for selfish purposes. And on the lower level of the mental plane, how low? Maybe the 7th level, perhaps, because that's where the astrally, the so-called hell of the average believer is found, on the 7th level, and maybe we can find that to be the case with respect to the lower mind. They are negations, and their tone, and is this tone of music, perhaps, is lower than the note of nature. Lower than the note of nature, and I'll, consider that to be represented by the green. They are the offspring of night, esoterically understood. Deep density of captivating form. They are the basis of glamour, so they affect the astral plane to induce glamour, of despair because they cut off access to the higher and joyful worlds, and of corruption. They lead to the decaying of forms which were to be used for the expression of the plan and must be neutralized by the pupil of the great ones by the admission of the colors connected with light. Well, not a very pleasant description, in fact. And I just feel I have to put them a little bit in black. We wouldn't normally see it, but that gives the idea. It's very poetic, the offspring of night. I'm reminded of the Mozart opera, The Magic Flute, which was all about the process of Masonic initiation, and there were characters within it that were born of the night, and their head was the queen of the night, who wished to retain the soul, which was her daughter, as it happens, Pamina. But then the emissary of the White Lodge, Tamino, came to save her. So it's the redemption of the soul from the night. Despair, of course, hopelessness. And hopelessness is a situation of being cut off from higher inspiration. And of course, decaying, corruption, this is inherently repulsive. Master Moria spoke of some of the ways that members of the Black Lodge work by leaving the dead carcasses of animals in their vicinity, those carcasses undergoing a process of decaying and generally polluting and corrupting the entire atmosphere, at least from the point of view of the light worker. Okay, so what have we here? The future use of color, okay. And this seems to be a number 6. What is it? Is it a continuation of 5? It looks like it is. Is this a continuation of the 5 above? 5 points above? The synthesis of all colors, as aforesaid, is the synthetic ray of indigo. And that, of course, this underlies and absorbs all. And therefore, I have difficulty finding it to be an exoteric color. Maybe in the previous solar system, it could be determined. And by the way, I found a big mistake, as I thought I would. I turned to page 420 or so in the actual paperback book or cloth book of Esoteric Psychology 1, and I found that yellow was written as exoteric color of the 5th ray, not a double esoteric. I mean, you can justify anything. But the way yellow surrounds the head and the brain in those auric pictures that Leadbeater provided for us shows that yellow is a transitional exoteric color of the fifth ray. We don't have two esoterics. So I just want to say point, and yeah, there it is, page 419. On page 419 of EP1, we find that yellow is listed as esoteric, but in the actual book, it is listed as exoteric, and I believe that is correct. Now, orange is also an exoteric color. Two exoterics and one color of indigo. Now, we can think of yellow as an esoteric color, but it's connected with the fourth ray and with the Buddhic plane. And I brought up my reservation at the time, then I went and researched it a little bit, and sometimes in the transfer of what's in the books to the CD-ROM, I'm sure they have a list of mistakes. Little mistakes do appear, but this is a big one. This is one that could throw off one's apprehension of the law of correspondences as it relates colors and rays, and within the esoteric exoteric framework. So please remark on that, and note the probable mistake that is found in the CD-ROM. Okay, the great synthetic ray is the ray of indigo. And this underlies all and absorbs all. And therefore, why call it an exoteric color when it is all absorbing? Now, I wonder if it's realized how very blue the planet Neptune appears to us with its monadic ray, or esoteric ray as it's called, being the second ray. It's far more blue than Uranus, which is sort of blue-green and, has quite an admixture of rays 3 and 5 in it. But Neptune is a true blue. Maybe not quite as dark as indigo, but a dark blue, relatively. Very beautiful, at least from our perspective, with our telescopes here on Earth, and also sent out on amazing information gathering journeys. Okay, the synthetic ray of indigo. But in the three worlds of human evolution, the orange of flame irradiates all. And this is this orange found in the causal body plentifully, and on the logoic plane and in general, wherever the mind and the fifth ray are indicated. The orange emanates from the fifth plane, under the fifth principle, and is the effect produced by the esoteric sounding of the occult words, our God is a consuming fire. I think, I'll make that orange. It's not, I'd like to highlight it, but I'll just instead make it orange. Now, is the cosmic mental plane orange? And is that the source of emanation which brings our systemic mental plane into the color orange? And don't forget, there is strangely, there's a cosmic mental subplane on the cosmic astral plane, just as we have our systemic fifth plane, which is systemic mental plane. And of course, what color is the cosmic mental plane itself? Well, those things are not given, but maybe we can extrapolate from what we know about the human being. These words apply to the monastic principle, that fire of intelligence or reason. It's a separator, which the lords of the flame imparted, and which stimulates and guides the life of the active personality. That is, if one is overshadowed by a solar angel, angel of the presence, and is not one of those for whom the spark of mind was merely fanned into a sufficient intensity to produce a kind of individualization without the implanted supervision of the solar angel, angel of the presence. So there is a close connection between orange and mentation, mental plane, the fifth ray, and the law of cleavages. We know the fifth ray is responsible for this law of cleavages, and we know how separative it can be and how much it can cut itself off from the higher types of registration. I've seen it with people, some meditators with a fifth ray mind, they just cleave the lower from the higher, they cut it off, and they fall asleep in meditation. Now, obviously, not every fifth ray type, or every fifth ray mind. No, of course not. But I have witnessed this. And when it began to appear, 2 times, 3 times, maybe more, 3 times that I can name, of course, I thought this is a ray of separation until it becomes a ray of union under the mantra 3 minds unite. So the fire of intelligence is here. And maybe some kind of orange association can be found with the soul nature of Venus. The planet itself is quite orangey. The planet Venus itself has an orange appearance. And even so does Mars, which, leads me to think that the first monadic ray we encounter in relation to Mars is the fifth ray, then maybe giving way to the first ray, just as the Earth does. I wonder sometimes in this process of synthesis that begins to occur in the latter part of the solar system, whether Earth does not absorb Mars and Venus absorb the Earth, and then Neptune absorb Venus. I mean, Venus technically is under the sway of Saturn, but Neptune is its higher octave, just the way Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury. So there, I think, are two lines of connection, which during the synthetic process bring Venus directly into absorption into Neptune, and Mercury directly into absorption in Uranus. And then, while I'm on the subject, I think that in this solar system, Neptune absorbs Uranus, and then the Sun absorbs Neptune. And the map to be used there, let's see, would be this one. If I can again find it. There it would be. So though Venus and Mercury are technically within this greater Saturn, Neptune, rather Venus, has a direct connection I think, with Neptune, and Mercury with Uranus. Now, those lines do not appear to be drawn, but we do have the higher octave idea, and Neptune is most definitely the higher octave of Venus. They both have the same monadic ray, and Uranus has a powerful third ray, and fifth ray, and so does Mercury, although the monadic ray, either the penultimate monadic ray or the highest monadic ray of Mercury, cannot be ray 1. It's more along the third ray line. And I think right here in the middle of all this, if I can find it, would be what's called the Saturn scheme. And there are the three synthesizing planets all connected by a triangle. But the line of connection of Venus to Neptune and of Mercury to Uranus is not depicted here. Only the triple synthesizing planets, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn. But I'm still convinced that that is what would happen. That is what would happen, and one kind of wonders what's going on there at the very center of the Saturn scheme, whether there are not certain chains connected directly with Neptune and with Uranus. No doubt Master K.H. would say something, well, the tree you're barking up has some interesting fruit if you could access it, but the time for you is not yet. Okay. So the Lords of the Flame imparted the orange flame. They imparted the orange flame. Interesting that orange is considered one of the colors of pride, maybe because it's somehow related to Leo and the fifth ray and the first ray. The psychopathology of the first and fifth rays says the Tibetan render a man eventually so walled off that he becomes untouchable. So those two planets are not exactly useful unless there's great skill in overcoming the great heresy of separateness. I think we need the 246 sources to overcome that heresy, which he says is the one great heresy. It is that light of reason which guides a man through the hall of learning, the love petals basically, and on into the hall of wisdom, the sacrifice petals of the mental plane. So having to do with the relationship between the lower mind and the higher mind. In the latter hall, hall being a kind of an area of specific energies to be contacted, in the latter hall, its limitations are discovered. The limitations of the monastic principle. And that structure which knowledge has built, the causal body or the temple of Solomon, or as Manly Hall has said, the temple of solar man, is itself destroyed by the consuming fire. And we know, interestingly, that when we look at flame, it has a very large orange component. So the limitations of the mental principle are discovered. And the structure of knowledge, as we work in the minds, the quarries from which we hew the stones to be transformed from a very rough condition into a smooth and polished condition. Those quarries have a lot to do with the mental work that we do. And eventually, the great fire at the fourth degree consumes that which knowledge has built, but in consuming it, it sublimates it. So the consumption by fire of that which mind has built within the causal body is or facilitates a transfer of quality into the spiritual triad, and thence at the appropriate time into the jewel in the lotus and into the monad. We have to, one day study what are the dynamics of involution, what are the parallel dynamics undoing the bondage of involution that are experienced on the path of evolution. That's the path which we are treading now, and one day the memory of our involutionary life and of our slow ascent through lower kingdoms on the evolutionary path will be capable of access. And it will be quite a dramatic showing, I think. We will see what we've been into. And as DK says, well, everyone has sinned, my brother. Everyone has sinned. Okay. So there are indeed limitations of all mental approach. And sometimes we act along with Descartes as if the mind is all determining. It's because I recognize a mind that I am. I think, therefore I am. I know in my early days I had a lot of trouble separating the idea of thought and the thinking process from the thinker. The mind seemed so all-consuming, it seemed to be what I was. But gradually, the process of detachment took over, and I was able to stand back and to see the mind at work. And know then that if I could see it, I must be something else. This fire consumes, I'm sorry, this fire consumes the gorgeous prison house which man has erected through many incarnations and lets loose the inner light divine, which we can say is blocked by that gorgeous prison house, no matter how gorgeous. It's not a word you often hear, gorgeous. When I was a very young boy, I used to, being Aries type, watch wrestling, and there was this wrestler by the name of, maybe some of you remember, Gorgeous George. I mean, of course, it's outrageous, dramatic, faked demonstration, probably coming from Roman days. But he had the long blonde curls and all the rest of it, I think he was anything but gorgeous. But the Tibetans using quite a word here to give the impression of great attractive power of the causal body, the egoic lotus, a thing of beauty. Then the two fires merge, mount upward, and are lost in the triadal light. Well, there are two fires, we might say fire by friction and solar fire. The one coming from the first coming from the personality, and the second from the egoic lotus causal body. So as we begin to achieve synthesis within our energy system, the joy content of our life experience increases dramatically. So first to the triad, not an immediate return to the monad. There is not an immediate return of the fires of the personality and egoic lotus to the monad. And that's important to know in terms of mapping the sequence of ascent of all that we have stored within the causal body. It doesn't really disappear. Otherwise, someone like the Tibetan who is with other masters triadly focused wouldn't be able to recount his approaches, the things that he did or didn't do in earlier incarnations. He still has those memories, but they've simply been transferred to his triadal permanent atoms. Certain colors belong more exclusively to the human hierarchy and others to the Deva. In their ultimate blending and intermingling comes eventual perfection. It's kind of a Ray IV thing. The city of perfection occurs on the fourth sublevel of the atmic plane. So there's a parallelism between perfection, intuition, fourth level of the Buddhic plane, and a higher form of clairvoyance on the fourth level. Well, no, I think no. No, it is discrimination between soul and personality on the fourth level of the mental plane, and imagination on the, I think, the fourth level. Or maybe it's a form of clairvoyance. Anyway, page 188 will tell us what it is, and then the gaseous plane. So you can go from subplane to subplane according to shared numbers and find similarities. We don't know what we will find on the fourth level of the monadic plane, but he does speak a little bit about it. I'm not sure I can easily find it, but I'll give it a try. Fourth subplane, monadic of the monad, fourth subplane monad. Let's see. Is there anything? Well, maybe not. But he does speak about it someplace. Okay, and maybe I can find it under monadic subplane. The fourth subplane, let's see if I can, show it to you. The fourth subplane of the monadic plane is, in a very real sense, the place of transition from off the egoic ray, whatever that ray may be, and it can be any one of the seven, onto the monadic ray. These three major rays are organized on the three higher subplanes of the monadic plane, in the same way that the three abstract subplanes of the mental are the group of transference from off the personality onto the egoic level, egoic. Yeah, this is very interesting, isn't it? You know, the monadic subplanes. Another synthesis takes place on the second, synthetic second ray on the second subplane of the Buddhic plane and the monadic plane. The heart-related chakras are found there. but having to do with a higher type of hearts related to the monad. While the comparatively few monads of willpower are synthesized on the atomic subplane of the atmic and not the buddhic, all three groups of monads work in triple form on the mental plane under the Mahachohan, the Manu, and the Bodhisattva, or the Christ. On the second or monadic plane, they work as a unit, demonstrating their dual work on the atmic plane and their essential triplicity on the Buddhic plane. So interestingly, there are two groups of, well, what should we call them? Triads on the atmic plane, and or maybe just one. I think one group on the atomic level of the atmic plane. It's page 39 in Letters on Occult Meditation. So let's see here. And it's a lovely color, but impenetrable. Yeah, there are two groups on the Buddhic plane, three on the mental plane, and one on the atmic plane, one on the monadic plane. And that can be found here, page 38, 39 of Letters on Occult Meditation. Is there anything else about the subrays of the monad? Yeah, well, pretty much the same as went before. The monads of the fourth creative hierarchy, or human monads, exist in three main groups: monads of will, love, and activity. So the Mahachohan presides over the activities carried on in the four minor rays and their synthesizing third ray. He has to do with civilization, with the intellectual culture of the races, and with intelligent energy. He is the head of all the adepts, the head of all the masters, or even those on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then the Bodhisattva and the Buddha. Once the Buddha held the position of Bodhisattva, and then the Manu presiding over the evolution of the races. Well, this is an important little footnote. Well, there's a lot here about subplanes and the line, the channel between all the atomic subplanes. On the second subplane of the monadic plane that the majority of the monads have their habitat, because there are 35 billion monads of love. There are a few monads of willpower on the atmic subplane. on the atomic subplane rather. But their numbers are not many. I think only 5, well, it's a huge number, but 5 billion monads of power. The majority of the monads are on the second subplane, and they are the monads of love. And on the third subplane can be found quite a number, now we're talking about 20 billion, of the monads of activity. But they're numerically not as many as the monads of love. And they are the failures of System 1. Well, they didn't complete in major System 1. We are learning here that after initiation, even the first, the causal body is found on the second subplane of the mental plane. And the monadic control then commences. Well, that's probably the way it is even now. I think this is worth going over, and maybe in classes found on the other side, we will be taking the time to go over this in some detail. And finally, on the atmic plane, on its third subplane, comes the final disintegration, for which the systemic law of disintegration has a supporting basis, which results in emerging with the monadic consciousness, even when that mysterious vehicle on the third sublevel of the atmic plane occurs, then we begin to slip into the monadic consciousness. Well, this is a section regarding the subplanes, which has to be read carefully. I've already, given quite a bit in the written commentary, which took years to complete, maybe 4 or 5, of classes every 6 months in United States, Europe, and Australia, New Zealand. So there's quite a bit there if you want to see what my more systematic elaborations are. Anyway, we cannot be led astray by the beauty of the causal body. Some people are. They don't want to sell all they have, give the money to the poor, and follow the Christ. This is the story probably of quite a few of the rich young men, there's the technical term for it, who reach the 3rd degree and find that they are quite content to remain in the presence of their virtues accumulated from below, but then they will block out higher opportunities descending from the Christ and from the Lord of the world. Many new possibilities will be foregone because they imagine that the possibilities they presently have are sufficient. So when we reach that point, let us not fall into that trap. Certain colors belong more exclusively to the human hierarchy, others to the Deva, and is their ultimate intermingling, blending, and intermingling through which comes eventual perfection. Well, he doesn't really specify which, but you kind of wonder whether the hard line colors, the red, and then maybe the green, the orange, the violet, belong more to the human hierarchy, and the indigo, the yellow, and the rose-colored or light blue belong more to the deva hierarchy. The devas have some pretty fundamental ray too, I think. And man has this first ray, which is not generally found in the Deva kingdom, though there are reputedly great warrior devas. Saint Michael is the archetype of that type of approach. And, you know, if you've seen some films like Raiders of the Lost Ark, the Ark of the Covenant, which apparently carried tremendous power, you understand that the devas can be very destructive when confronting iniquity. Okay, so he's given us a bit of an introduction here from page 208 onwards. And now he's going to get into the enumeration of the colors. 208 to, and we'll begin to see why he has done this. Yeah. So, enumeration of the colors. We will go on. Tonight, we must continue our study on color and take up the first point, enumeration of the colors. In doing this, I will make certain comments and give you certain data, impressing upon you nevertheless again the fact that I use the exoteric terms, and the discussion is but for suggestive purposes. So he's only going to go so far. He's laying the foundation. Can we withstand that without getting overly anxious about the practical details that we might like to begin applying? The very use of the word color shews the intention. For as you know, the definition of the word conveys the idea of concealment. Color is therefore that which does conceal. So everything's a bit upside down in our world. As I say, we look at captivation and enthrallment as some kind of positive state, when from the occult point of view, it is hardly that. The hour is late. So excuse me for dozing off there for a split second. Concealment. It is simply the objective medium by means of which the inner force transmits itself. It is the reflection upon matter of the type of influence that is emanating from the logos, I guess the solar logos, and which has penetrated to the densest part of this solar system. We recognize it as color. The adept knows it as differentiated force, and the initiate of the higher degrees knows it as ultimate light, undifferentiated and undivided. So, different perspectives on color, and it is objective. A few of the words can be highlighted. Objective medium can be highlighted. Reflection upon matter can be highlighted. And differentiated force can be highlighted. We must not become captivated by color. We can use it, but there is kind of a tendency of certain ray types to be captivated by its potential beauty. And it's like passing through the astral plane and hearing the sirens sing and shipwrecking because of that singing. It's also hearing in the Hindu tradition the Gandharvas sing. There are all kinds of captivations by beauty on the way to freedom. Captivations by beauty on the way to freedom, and we have to extricate ourselves from those influences. Differentiated force, and finally, ultimate light, reducing all colors back to an original oneness. You know, I think some research on the nature of color would be very useful. What do the scientists say about it, you see? That would be helpful. Okay, now I'm going to make this the white color. Okay. So DK gives a number of perspectives from different angles on what color is. Just look around you, you know, there's so much of differentiated color before. Of course, I'm putting certain colors on the computer screen, but around me I see the blue and the black and the rose and the green, and I see yellowish light. I certainly see white and black. I mean, whether we can call them colors per se. A greenish blue. Color makes up so much of our visual sensory input that we may even fail to note that we are really observing it. But it is external, and it is an objective medium through which inner force transmits itself, and therefore, that force, I just find my way here, that force can be used for various purposes: healing, building, strengthening, STRENGTH, and also weakening. Back in the Greek times, their music was modal and based upon different scales. And there were scales which were considered unsupportive of the goals of the state. I believe the Lydian mode, which was simply what we now call a major scale, was considered to be a scale that weakened. And maybe some of the minor modes were more appreciated. The Dorian, the Mixolydian, Lydian, there's another, and maybe more than one. It depends on what note is your root note. Maybe there are colors too that can be considered as weakening. I know a lot of, men, they don't want to wear pink because they think that somehow it contributes to their weakening. A number of women in the political field, they put on a bright red to stand out and show that they have authority in areas that have traditionally been considered men's work. You see the Republicans and Democrats switching their ties all the time. The Republicans will wear that red tie, that's a signal. But every once in a while, to expand their contact, their outreach, they will wear the blue tie, which is more the Democratic color. And you do see the Democrats wearing often the color blue, and we have a contrast here between Jupiterian blue and Martian red, second ray and sixth ray. Of course, it's not limited to that only, but just, be aware of how the blue and the red show up in the chosen dress of the candidates. So color has its applications, and it's a way of bringing through an internal type of energy, principled energy, through a kind of vibratory vehicle. So I think I'll say something like that principled energy is passed through a vibratory vehicle. That vehicle being color. We have to ponder these statements. It's the only way of really, getting them into our consciousness in a secure manner. Otherwise, again, just words. We enumerated the colors yesterday and in a certain order. Remember how it went: blue, indigo, green, yellow, orange, red, number 6, and violet, number 7. I seek again to enumerate them thus, only this time reminding you that the one ray, of which all the others are but subrays, might be regarded as a circle of sevenfold light. Okay. Of course, he is going to speak of the indigo ray, the major synthetic ray. And he's using the idea of the circle, or maybe even of the sphere. Too apt is the student to picture 7 bands striking down athwart the 5 lower planes till they contact the earth plane and are absorbed into dense matter. Not so is it in fact. And there you see the kind of language the Tibetan was using in the early days of his collaboration with Alice Bailey. It's not exactly the English that we are used to. Okay, not so is it in fact. The 7 colors may be regarded as a band of 7 colors, circling and continuously shifting and moving through the planes back to their originating source. Sometimes he has described the spherical planes and the spherical rays and their interaction with each other and the design that they tend to make, a kind of a serpent design, serpentine. These 7 bands of color emanate from the synthetic ray. The indigo subray of the indigo ray forms the path of least resistance from the heart of densest matter back again to the source. Now, we've been given another kind of ellipse here. It would be fascinating to know what is being, withheld. But okay. At a certain point, we will discover that as needed. The bands of color form a circulating ring, which, moving at different rates of vibration, pass through all the planes, circling down and up again. Well, this is the verticality of the rays, circling in relation to the horizontality, the spherical horizontality of the planes. It's spherical, a kind of rotation, and interacting planes and rays, they are different. A circulating ring. I really, it's difficult to picture this, but we can understand how there's a moving up and a moving down and a moving sideways. The moving up after moving down is simply the completion of the sphere, and from east to west there are the planes rotating. What I seek to bring out especially here is that these 7 bands do not all move at the same rate. You know, somehow the differentiated rotation of areas of the sun are a kind of example. Differing rates of rotation are found. Some move at a swifter rate of vibration than do some of the others. I guess according, to the ray cycles, or maybe there are some planar cycles, PLANR, that are part of the dynamics. Hence, as they carry their corresponding monads with them, rays carry their monads. So the ray bands, and not sunglasses, the ray bands carry their own group of monads. You have here the answer to the question as to why some egos seem to make more rapid progress than do others. So this has to do with rapidity or slowness. Okay, all this has to do with the relative rapidity of the bands. And he did use the word seem. Now, does that mean that in fact they don't, and that somehow it's all balanced out and it's a equal opportunity solar system? All right, maybe we can learn something about it. 7 bands in movement through each other, overtaking each other, falling behind, rising, falling, interacting. That's more the reality of the situation when it comes to the rotation of the ray energies. It's not so much a revolution as a rotation. Vertical rotation, and in terms of the planes, a horizontal rotation. I mean, visualizing all of this is something eventually we want to be able to do, and we want to be able to see those graphic renderings of the process, which will make everything as clear as possible. These colored rings do not follow a straight, unimpeded course, but interweave in a most curious manner, blending with each other, absorbing each other in stated cycles, and grouping themselves in groups of 3s or 5s. Those are 2 numbers having to do with the 5th ray. 35, according to the rayologist Stephen Pugh, 3 and 5 determines the 5th ray cycle, yet ever moving onwards. And this is the real foundation of the diamond pattern. That's it, upon the back of the serpent of wisdom. Well, we can see why the higher psychism is highly desirable. not just psychic impression, but accurate, higher psychism. So there is, what you say, there is complexity here. These colored rings do not follow a straight, unimpeded course, but interweave in a most curious manner, blending with each other, absorbing each other in stated cycles, ray absorption, and grouping themselves in groups of 3s or 5s. Well, the Tibetan is doing his best to explain this to us, but in this particular case, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Okay, and this is simply right. Sometimes, this is, I think, very difficult to grasp after all. And we will have to one day see this in action, and dynamic graphics will help us. Dynamic graphics will help. Otherwise, it really demands of the visualization something which is not easily reproduced. 3 major lines of color should be portrayed as forming the lattice work on the serpent's skin, with the 4 other colors interweaving. So basically, we have warp and woof. And I think it would be, yeah. Well, I can see that unfortunately I have, I'm sorry about that. You just have to deal with my words. Here are some of the statements that I've made and that maybe you have not seen for a while because I failed to press the right button. But here's all that I've said. Color is a veil. It's an objective medium. It's a reflection upon matter of influences. They are differentiated forces, and for the higher initiate, they represent ultimate light. And the colors have been enumerated already. And they are to be regarded as bands of 7 colors. I'm just reviewing quickly because I see that I did not give the advantage of actually seeing what I was reading or typing, but it's not worth erasing the whole thing and starting again. The words may be sufficient. And the bands of colors emanate from the Indigo Ray. And the bands of colors form circulating rings, which are moving at different rates of vibration and passing through all the planes and circling down and up again. I tried to explain a little bit of how that works, but of course, our visualization is required. Sorry for the imperfection there, but okay, it happens. The bands don't move all at the same time or at the same rate. I'm just doing a quick review. And because of that differential rate of movement, there is complexity. The complexity of the situation results from the differentiated movement of the bands of color. Ray bands, okay. And when we look at the sun, we also see that it does not rotate in a manner which can be called monolithic, but different bands or strata within it rotate at different rates. So there's something we've noticed in our science. And those that are moving faster or slower are taking their monads with them. So some monads seem to make more rapid progress than others. But we're not told what kind of progress. The Christ, of course, in this second ray solar system, and Venus, a second ray monad in this second ray solar system, have on their own levels made very rapid progress. Is it the second ray of love that is the fastest? And it's not just a straight and uncomplicated, unimpeded course, but there's interweaving going on all the time. And a serpent of wisdom is found as a pattern due to the interaction, a diamond pattern. The diamond is connected with Capricorn. So maybe here initiation is involved, and Capricorn, the sign of the diamond. And dynamic graphics will help us. Now, the warp and the woof, that's where we were when I discovered that, I haven't been showing you the text. What can I say? If I was more adept at editing, I might go back and try to make that happen, but I think we can gather what we need to gather. And, when you review this, you can stop your recorder and simply look at what's written, stop your computer, and look at what's written, or you can have the book next to you. And let's see here. In weaving, and now here again, I'm going to have to be careful. The warp in weaving. What is the warp in weaving? And we'll try to look at that. And the warp and weft or woof, difference. So that's the following. Warp and weft of the two basic components used in weaving to turn thread or yarn into fabric. The lengthwise or longitudinal warp are held stationary in tension on a frame or loom, while the transverse weft or woof, I guess, sometimes woof, is drawn through and inserted over and under the warp. So, warp and woof, warp and weft, and what I'll do here is show this. Here we go. Okay, this is a definition from Wikipedia, and yes, I'm in the right place. Thank goodness. Okay. And we can call this also, we have the warp and the woof or weft. I never can quite remember what they are, but maybe now I'll be able more to do that. I think that what we are seeing is that we know so little of what is going on behind the scenes esoterically, and how we really do live in a world of effects, and that the true causes are concealed from us unless we developed the higher psychism and the ability to work at higher points of tension. So this should be a considerable incentive for us. So the three major lines of color as forming the lattice work of the serpent's skin, and we might call this the warp, with four other colors interweaving, and this is the weft or woof. Yeah. Someday, some student of color and of the divine wisdom should compile a large chart of the seven planes, and superimposed upon those planes should be placed the seven-colored serpent of wisdom. Well, I think I know someone who's tried to do that, and it looked reasonable. I will say reasonable. If correctly drawn to scale, interesting geometrical patterns will be found as the circles cut across the planes, and some impression will be conveyed ocularly of the complexity of the matter of the seven rays. So we have so far the simplest, rather psychological presentation of the rays. Ocularly, to the eye. Okay. 100 years ago, this was asked, but maybe it's not something that can be done immediately. There's just so much movement, mutation, and all according to pure reason going on behind the world of effects, the world of becoming, the world of expression, the will to expression on the seventh ray. And the true student of occultism will be able scientifically to detect, register those movements. But right now we're just being acquainted with the idea that they do exist. Certain brief statements seem to be in place. The true indigo is the blue of the vault of heaven on a moonless night. It is the culmination and at the attainment by all of synthesis. The solar night will supervene the pralaya. Hence the color corresponds to what the sky nightly proclaims, and indigo absorbs. And of course we have the absorbent second ray that takes everything in. Let's see, I have to make sure I'm, showing you what's there. Yeah, the absorbent second ray. We know the story of the sensitive second ray that absorbs all negativity and returns in its place positivity. So I think the thing to do there is, again, to give the indigo color, but naturally white script. Otherwise, we can't see. The solar night, the pralaya will supervene, and Master Moria has a quotation about this, about the stars and their particular light in contrast to the sun. And when the sun is seen, the stars of intuition are not seen. This is one of the great intuitive signs, the second ray, maybe even more intuitive than the fourth. It is the great ray which begins to reveal truth on the Buddhic plane and then beyond. Indigo is the absorbent ray. I sometimes joke that the second ray medicine is absorbitol. And indeed, there's a vulnerability of the inclusive second ray. We're told about Alice Bailey that she had a kind of work that nobody knew about it, and it really had to do with absorbing negativity and returning in its place the love wisdom. So he wants to add a few thoughts about this. Green is the basis of the activity of nature. It was the synthetic color for System 1 and is the foundation for the present manifested system, sometimes called the primordial ray. The note of nature is green, but we're told that nobody could withstand to hear simultaneously the note of nature. And so much of our issue is the adjustment of the blue to the green. The blue, the indigo of the present solar system, to the leftover green of the previous, which is foundational. The result would be, I guess, blue-green. Virgo seems to have something to do with that. So does Uranus in terms of its color as a planet. The note of nature is green, and each time a man reviews the robe in which the earth is clad, covering the earth with verdure, the green does that, he is contacting some of the force that reached its consummation in System 1. Green stimulates and heals. And, it's much used in the healing arts, especially this color called spring green. Okay. Foundation for the present manifested system. But there is much difficulty in bringing these two colors into harmonious adjustment. He says the second ray and the third ray have problems working together, and there we are with our second ray planetary soul and our third ray planetary personality. And in general, the blue of the soul ovoid and the green of the personality. Those are in generic terms, not in terms of what a particular person has as their rays, but it's a 2-3 situation, even if we leave the red, the generic red of the monad out of the picture. I seek to call your attention here to the fact that it is not yet permissible to give out the esoteric significance of these colors, nor exact information to their order and application. What did he have? The blue, indigo, green, yellow, orange, red, and violet. That's how he gave them. That was their order. But there are other ways, I'm sure, to arrange them. I mean, the red could take the place of the first ray, and when we got to the sixth ray, we could have a different color blue than the indigo. The dangers are too great, for in the right understanding of the laws of color, and in the knowledge, for instance, of which color stands for a particular ray, lies the power that the adept wields. And yet, from a certain perspective, we know at least some of this. This is an early book, and later, as he filled in, we gathered what color and what rays were associated. Blavatsky gave the colors and the planets we know have rays, so we can put 2 and 2 together and get a fairly good idea. But we don't know exactly how to use the colors. I've seen color healers, and they use certain apparatus and crystals which spread the color beautifully, and in the radiation of which the person sits so that the color can do its work. But of course, it has to be handled scientifically, and note has to be made of the real effects. So we're not getting exact information as to their order and application, but we might be able to somewhat figure that out. Not completely, no. but some indications can be ours. So, and we do see that color can be very powerful. Maybe, think of it, accompanied by the right note or notes and the right rhythm. So, color, notes, scale, rhythm, words, forms. Maybe we could say, yeah, forms and geometrical forms, all spiritual numerals in a way. And how to put it all together so it's not just a confusion and a kind of speculative experimentation, but so that the right methods are really used, exact methods, such as the methods used by the assembled hierarchy at the Wesak festival before the invocation, or as part of the invocation of the Buddha. And to this we can add, to these we add the vortex and the channel and the vacuum to promote communication between the higher and lower and the lower and higher. Well, these are factors which, when properly organized in our minds and properly applied, make spiritual occultism the power that it is, that it can be. Of course, the other side also uses these colors, and or some colors anyway, and negative effects can result from their use. Well, there's more. There's another 10 pages here. I have to see whether I have the steam or whether I'm going to be having my nose on the keyboard here. One has to keep driving forward as best one can. But, you know, I think we have quite a bit that we've given, and I'll just try to think about here for a moment whether to proceed. You know, I think we can see how a book like this can be used as a seed book, not just for the preparatory schools, but to accompany the work done in the advanced schools, especially when the hints are followed out and the students begin to really apply what they're learning. I guess that some experimentation is possible. We all have certain conditions in our personality that require adjustment, and probably we know enough about sound let's say, the blue note, the green note, the red note, and so forth, the association with planets and the rays and the colors and the forms which can be visualized, to undertake some corrective adjustment in our vehicles. The power of the imagination becomes extremely important. We would have to proceed carefully, slowly, and objectively, if possible. You know, if agitation is a problem, maybe the color rose would be useful. If vitalization is low, the color orange would be useful. If general health is a question, the color green would be useful. I mean, to stimulate the heart center, not only the golden yellow, but the great indigo blue would be important. And if the solar plexus reaction can be avoided, the use of red will stimulate the will. And we can visualize different geometrical figures in color while sounding a particular note associated with them. Suppose I wanted to stimulate love, wisdom, or even love. I might visualize an even-armed cross in indigo blue and sound a blue note such as the G. Now, maybe this would have an effect not only on the heart, but on the nature of the silvery blue of the throat center, so that the words, the magical words, the creative words would be filled with love and would go forth in that way. But of course, the color green can also be used. Then, we know something about the Ajna center and kind of a blue and violet along with a red, along with a yellow and rose. So subsidiary categories there: sixth ray rose, fourth ray yellow, seventh ray violet, second ray the blue that's being used. And we can also work, with the jewel at the center of various chakras, but caution, is advised. At first, DK says, well, absorb that light orange color and imagine that I'm on the higher mental plane and your soul's on the higher mental plane, and the apex of the triangle touches your head center, and let the orange yellow light pour down and suffuse your etheric physical and maybe the whole personality, and bathe in that color as if you would bathe in the waters of the sea. That is a hint about how we can use color. I think a lot of caution would be required with red. We don't understand the will very well, and it's liable to just go into irritation and fire by friction and the Martian energy of the lower solar plexus. But when working with the second and third ray, you know, some combination of indigo and green can be utilized, and maybe a green square to represent the personality generically, and an indigo triangle or star to indicate the soul nature and the presence of the indigo star or triangle within the green square. And maybe notes could be alternated in this manner. Om, 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 so forth. Now we don't have the precise method of interweaving and interaction, but at least we could become sensitive to what various imagined colors seem to do within our nature. And generally, to bathe in the indigo light, I don't think can be a negative thing. I think it will support the growth of love, wisdom, energy. Except under very special circumstances, I would stay away from the red for the moment. And if we want the mentality to increase, then the power of yellow, remember how yellow is really the exoteric color of the fifth ray. There's a mistake in the CD-ROM. And indigo blue is the esoteric color, which can make a bridge to the great synthetic ray of indigo, the second ray. And then, you know, in general, to calm the nervous system, the rose color, yes, and to bring order into the life, the violet color. Although he said, you know, be careful there because violet has quite a reaction upon the etheric body. He talks about that in terms of banishing fear, various kinds of fears, in a treatise on white magic. So there's all kinds of internal occult methods that can be used. Now we're still very much in the spirit of experimentation, and we just don't want to go too far. But it's like putting your toe in the water, you know, you can get a sense of, is there some beneficent change which can occur by using these spiritual numerals. You know, and we have various symbols given to us by Jeffrey Hodson. The circle with the dot, we'll recognize that as the sun symbol. He seems to call it a first ray symbol, but if anything, it's a combination of the first and second ray, I think, and then the cross for the second ray, and the triangle for the third, and some kind of interlocking lines which create a diamond for the fourth ray, or maybe some kind of clover, you know, the four-leaf clover. And the fifth ray could be a star. It could be an orange star, an indigo star. The sixth ray could be the long-armed cross with of rose color or light blue color. Light blue, or just blue, is indeed associated with the sixth ray. And so he tells us, you know, that, as I've mentioned, the blue flowers will be disappearing relatively, and the violet flowers will be coming in with the change of rays. And then the swastika may be rotating in both directions, not just the mal-appropriated involutionary swastika that the Nazis used, but the symbol of evolution, the swastika turning in the other direction, maybe towards the right instead of the left. And yet the natural way of going through the signs is from left to right. Is it? Yeah. And from right to left, it's the natural way of going through the signs is counterclockwise. And the clockwise swastika will have to do with evolution and not involution. But there are ways of looking at a double swastika, and maybe it's called the Hammer of Thor. Thor. Does that have to do with Thor's Day, with Jupiter, with Thor? There are ways of combining these spiritual numerals, and it requires maybe cautious experimentation, not going too far. Because after all, we don't have the teacher immediately present to correct methods that we may begin using which are not appropriate. But in the same way that we can play certain notes and chords and see what their effect may be, everybody knows the difference between a minor interval and a major interval. One is overcast, and the other is sunny. So many sad songs begin dum 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 ta da dee da da dum da dum. The Greensleeve song. But dee dee dum dum da 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 da. Much more cheerful, using the major third. And then, the deep complaint of the minor sixth. Dee-dum, da-dee-da-da-da-dum, da-da. It's backward looking, it's nostalgic, it's bound. But, simple little song. Dum-pum-pa-bum-pum-pum-pum-pa-dum. My body lies over the ocean. Dum-da. That's the major sixth. Immediately things open up. I'm not saying that the major sixth is necessarily more beautiful than the use of the minor sixth, but, well, I've gone into that. I mean, you can experiment a little bit with the presence of certain notes and certain chords. Maybe you have a piano or a keyboard at home and you can use certain chords and see what their repeated effect is upon your energy system. So he's, giving us the ABCs of that kind of method. It can be psychologically uplifting, restorative, or if we make mistakes, like the Greeks thought, we can use the wrong mode and plunge the whole state into chaos. There's a story about Pythagoras, I may have mentioned it, that he was out for a stroll in the evening and he saw a disgruntled lover about to set fire to his lover's house. He was putting the wood in position. He was going to burn it down, and maybe with her in it. And I don't know if he did that to the sound of music, but he was doing it. And Pythagoras, being a great mathematician, musician, teacher, immediately took out whatever instrument he was using and played a different mode of Greek music. And the man stopped and thought, and then began to regather the wood, took it away, and went away. So music has an extraordinary effect upon our behavior, upon our psyche, and color does too. And when we use the right music with the right color and the right forms and the right geometry and the right rhythm, we have a very potent esoteric method of affecting change of behavior in others, but first, within one's self. It's a kind of nourishment in a way. You have to be careful what you eat, and some things really agree with you and improve your general health and attitude, and other things have quite the opposite effect. So, I've tried to do this with some groups. I was down in New Zealand a fairly long time ago, and we spent the weekend working with color and the sacred word. But one can go much deeper than I went there. These are vibrations, and vibrations have effect on other vibrations: vibration, light, sound, and color. The sequence in a treatise on cosmic fire: vibration, light, sound, and color. So, I've kind of talked myself into conducting a few little experiments again, because I've, somewhat forgotten that. If depression, deflation, you talked about it a little earlier, with those somber sort of Black Lodge colors, if that plagues you, there's a way to change color, to change mood, to change the note, to change the design. I think we'd get a lot farther meditating upon the upright pentagram than we would the inverted pentagram, which, suggests the lower aspect of the personality. So that's, just a little bit about how some of this might be used with caution and with note-taking, keen observation about what was the effect. Now, in the new schools, the knowers of these things will be teaching in centuries to come. And the whole thing will be guided and guarded. But it always takes a little bit of the spirit of adventure to extend yourself towards new possibilities. You don't have to be the fool that rushes in where angels fear to tread, but you can extend yourself into a little experimentation with the spiritual numerals. Well, friends, I would love to continue, but the clock was set back last night, and it's later than I think. I would love to just go on through the night, but, the nose and the keyboard might interfere with the flow. So we'll see when I can get to this again. Who knows, if I get a big stream of energy, it may even be tonight, but I doubt it. And maybe tomorrow. I always look for a chance to return to these matters, which are so esoterically foundational and part of the great science of invocation, whereby we put ourselves within the radius of the stream that is coming forward from certain sources. We attune, we receive, we bathe in the stream, and changes do take place through the power of the creative imagination, not just any old active imagination like, you in psychology just let your imagination go and what do you come up with. I mean, that can be diagnostically interesting and can reveal difficulties and pathologies and all that. But we're talking about the consecration of occult knowledge to a positive end. We just kind of pause there for a minute and say, wow, what a gift we're being given, and may we receive it in the right spirit and utilize it in the right manner and become ever better at utilizing this imparted information, which is meant to make our life better and, in general, humanity's life better. There's just so many obstacles right now to overcome and so many issues of unfairness and selfishness and so forth. But the day will come, and the age into which we are entering is the age of universal love. At least that's the great potential of Aquarius. Pervasive wisdom for Pisces and universal love for Aquarius, which doesn't mean that Aquarius is without wisdom. Okay, well, I'll sign off now, and wishing you, from Tuya and myself, and from the whole communications group, lots of love and many blessings, and the will to study, and the will to meditate, and the will to apply in service. May these things be characteristic of your life and mine, and of more and more human beings. So we'll begin here on page 213 next time, and we still have some 40 pages to go in this particular letter. Letter, I think, number 7. Then there's 8 and 9. I think that's it. Okay. See you before long, and all the best to you. And bye-bye for now.